Subscribe or you're a coward.
What is going on? C2 Wrestling. It is post WrestleMania 41. Unfortunately, that great weekend is gone, but we are still here. You know, we're going to be reviewing every Monday Night Raw, every Friday Night SmackDown, so you still got to hang out with the boys. Monday Night Raw tonight. We're building to Backlash, which is sooner rather than later. You know, it's next Saturday. That's pretty quick. Usually there's another week or so in between these PLEs, but Backlash, we got a little bit of a build up to it tonight. Some more things are becoming official for the show. I mean, where do you want to start?
Yeah, just speaking of Backlash, it almost like obviously you have the Raw and SmackDown after Mania, and like they still count as shows, but they both kind of get warped into Mania. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
the Raw after WrestleMania, the SmackDown after WrestleMania. So it truly feels like you're really only getting two episodes of each show before PLE, not
Yep.
three, because that is like tied in. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to complain about more wrestling, but could this show use an extra week? Two matches that we're going to talk about in a moment. I'm glad we're not getting an extra week of build, so I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll start with what started and opened the show, and that's this fucking awesome faction of Seth, Braun Breaker, and Heyman. Look, I'm gonna shit on some things. This is not one thing I'm gonna shit on.
Yeah, I don't predict myself shitting on this for a while. They would have to really F something up, which it's not impossible. There could definitely be something that comes along that screws up this faction a little bit. But at the time being, I think it's great. You know, especially another week into it. This is really the first week into it because they just formed at the end of last week. It reeks a little bit of what's maybe left over of the Monday Night Messiah gimmick to me. You know, it's kind of reminiscent of that in a way. That I had some pull to it back then, but you know, the COVID era Thunderdome, it was all kind of shit. So, you know, they scratched that, and maybe this is kind of their second chance at that. You know, they're trying to rework something with Rollins having a faction behind him, and I mean, Braun Breaker's the best choice possible, honestly. You know, even if they were to leave it at just the two of them and Heyman, that's fine for the time being. I don't know if they need to add a third person quite yet. I'm sure they're going to at a point, but I'm liking what we're getting.
Yeah, to pull a Sami Zayn and compare to the Bloodline for a second, the Bloodline and Roman kind of have opened up this new realm for monster factions that are heels that you would expect them, like tonight, they're ending the show trying to get heat and, really just ultra baby face up Sami Zayn as usual. And the crowd's chanting for one more time, one more
Mm-hmm.
speed, They're getting a face reaction essentially. The crowd's still chanting for Seth. The bloodline in like this new age of wrestling has really opened up the door to where that's fine. Like they're still heels. We still love Sami Zayn. We're still gonna cheer for Sami Zayn. We're probably gonna cheer for Seth and Braun Breaker too, because it's a badass duo. But we understand that they're the bad guys and Sammy is the good guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I can get behind this story. I want to ask you actually about it.
Mm-hmm.
There seemed to be, I'll do the fingers. They love to do long-term storytelling.
Yeah.
Still a little under the weather, sorry. They love to do long-term storytelling. It felt like we got the tease of the long-term storytelling when they harped on Sami Zayn not having a WWE or World Heavyweight Championship. We assume sooner rather than later, Seth Rollins is going to become champion again. I would
Mm-hmm.
assume so with how dominant him and Braun Breaker will be. They really have set up for the long-term story of Sammy finally getting that championship win, being against Seth Rollins, his longtime friend, his longtime pal, and it'll be, this is chapter one, paragraph one of that story. This is something that wouldn't happen until, who knows, maybe WrestleMania, maybe the Royal Rumble, where it's in Saudi Arabia and Sami Zayn is ultra babyface with the Saudi crowd. This feels like if that's the long-term story, we just got the first sentence in the first chapter of the first page.
Yeah, I think we absolutely did. I mean, things can always change. You know, who knows what the atmosphere is going to be like in 6 months to a year. Like maybe there's somebody else that naturally can come up or get over or something. But you might as well start building to somebody. And that person clearly is Sami Zayn at the moment. And I mean, rightfully so. He's definitely deserving of that push, to finally maybe get that big underdog win. And I'm not going to say at the moment because, this faction is just starting and Seth doesn't have the title right now. But at the moment, the person you build up is probably Seth to be the big dog now, to get the big baby face win over. Cody had his moment with Roman. Maybe Sami does win the Rumble in Saudi and goes on to face Seth at WrestleMania. I mean, that's the best choice to win that Rumble. Predictable, sure, but like, who cares? It's in Saudi. You might as well just have Sami win it. Go
Yeah,
predictable at
yeah,
that point.
yeah.
But I got to ask you though too. You love this faction, right? Braun and Seth and Heyman. Okay, what do you love more, this faction or being congested?
Oh man. I think I love the most is being congested for a week. That's what I
Yes,
really
yes.
like.
Especially when you lose your taste.
I think
Can't breathe
thankfully,
well. Yeah,
look, I have some things to be thankful for. I'm thankful for this faction. I'm thankful for the NXT women that are showing up on Raw that we'll talk about in a second. I'm also thankful that although I've been congested as all hell, I still have my taste and I've not had a cough. Thank the Lord.
Yeah, we might not even upload this review. I don't want you to speak it into existence now.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
If I wake up with a cough tomorrow,
yeah.
it's
Delete in the
C1
review. No
wrestling
raw
now.
review.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's over.
I did want to bring up though about Seth, Sammy, and Braun, everything going on over there. Yeah, obviously again, you're kind of building Sammy up. Sure, Braun is kind of the secondary to Seth. Seth probably wins the title back eventually. Um, Sammy kind of had the thing with Jay last week. Jay gets into it with Logan Paul tonight, as we kind of predicted last week. That would probably be the route they go. And I'll get into Jay and Logan in a minute. But why isn't Seth going after Jay? I understand it's the new faction, but Seth got the win over Punk and Roman. Like, Seth should kind of be on paper the Backlash #1 contender.
Yeah, the only like to be fair in the story aspect, maybe he was about to call out Jay and Sammy interrupted. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
like to be as like a viewer who, whatever, we're in a different world.
yeah, yeah.
That would essentially be what the story is, and now it's led into this. He has to go this route, and then he'll address Jay and get to Jay and go for the
Mhm.
title.
Yeah, I mean, the point they're going to get to that point where Jay retains against Logan at Backlash, I'm sure, and then Jay is on to the next thing, which is potentially Sammy, or not Sammy, Seth. Jay versus Seth, Money in the Bank, SummerSlam. I don't think Jay holds that belt past SummerSlam the latest. I don't even know if he's champion going into SummerSlam, to be honest. So I see the belt flipping sooner rather than later, but not to Logan Paul. I get the match, Jay versus Logan. I understand it. That's the ultra heel versus the ultra baby face. It only puts Jay over a little bit more. It'll be a good match, but whatever.
Triple H. Triple H. I'm gonna blow up the group chat between us three trips. I like Jay a lot.
Yeah, me too.
I also love Gunther.
Yeah.
It should be practically illegal to have our post-Mania stories Jey Uso versus Logan Paul for the world title and Gunther versus fucking Pat McAfee. I know people are saying, "Oh, maybe it's Gunther to write off Pat." I know, I know. Fuck off.
So I'm gonna get into Gunther and McAfee in a second as well. Jay and Logan, again, it's the ultra heel. Jay's got to get a win over somebody. If it wasn't Logan, who do you have Jay get a win over really at Backlash? Is I guess maybe the other problem. You got to
I
get
don't give a
one.
fuck.
You got to get
Face
one
me
win under
for
his
all I
belt.
care.
I listen. People can hate Logan the person. He's a dick. How else do you want me to put it? But like, he's a heel. He's a good wrestler. I get it. The people that are going to shit on it as if we shouldn't understand it aren't watching the same show. I'm not crazy about Logan, but he's great in the ring. He's great on the mic. All that, blah blah blah. It's the ultra heel against the ultra baby face again. Could it have been somebody else? I don't know who do you have in that spot to take the loss at Backlash instead of Jay, or against Jay, I should say.
I honestly didn't even think that far just because I was like,
Yeah,
this is so stinky. And
that's
you mentioned it last
last
week,
week.
and I
I
was
remember
like,
kind of
fuck, you're right.
we were shitting on it last week. And after seeing it come out tonight, like I was still kind of shitting on it in my head, but like that was the only counterpoint to myself was like, who else really for him to get a win over at Backlash? And I guess just get him to the next positioning. But on the other hand, you bring up Gunther and Pat McAfee, which again, I don't know. Gunther, longest reigning IC champion, goes into a world title run after winning King of the Ring, has this crazy run, loses the belt to Jay. All is good. I don't know if Gunther versus Pat McAfee post Mania is the route. The only two good things I think that can come from this, I think it might write McAfee off, and maybe we get a different commentary booth, hopefully. And maybe this is like a weird way of them upgrading Gunther again. I think at Backlash, we're going to get a type of Gunther that we maybe haven't even quite seen yet, which Gunther's this is C2 Wrestling. If you guys are watching this, by now, Gunther's the GOAT. Always has been, always will be. But at Backlash, I don't want McAfee to get a single ounce of offense in. I want Gunther to pummel him, destroy the guy, and then we have not to compare it to Brock, but you have a Brock-like version of Gunther now that you can maybe build on. And maybe we get this Gunther tour of destruction. Gunther, in my opinion, is due for a big WrestleMania win. He hasn't really had many of those. He won the Triple Threat IC, but he's lost the title in two big matches at back-to-back Manias. Gunther's my other candidate to possibly win the Royal Rumble coming up in Saudi. So maybe we're on a long rebuild of Gunther to get him up another echelon.
Yeah, it's very possible. I'm thinking of like analogies in my head. Like imagine you spend a year living in Cabo and then you come back from Cabo, you spend a month at home, that's your King of the Ring, and then you spend a year living in fucking Hawaii and you're eating like a king, everything's comped, you know, anything and everything. And then they're like, all right, now you're going to live in Toledo, Ohio or some
Well,
shit. Like, fucking
it's
holy
comparable.
shit.
There's a certain NFL quarterback that was playing in LA and now plays for Detroit. So there's a
Yeah,
big change
yeah,
of pace there.
yeah.
Yeah, kind of similar to that route, and that's exactly what it is. I need to see what they do with Gunther after this McAfee thing to really settle on it. I don't love it. I'm not gonna absolutely shit on it, I guess. Also for the idea that the segment last week with Gunther attacking Michael Cole and McAfee was great. I can't hate on that at all.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's great because Gunther did it.
yeah, well, exactly. That's true. Honestly, Gunther could do me like that, and I would love it. It's no problem. But the segment last week was good. Gunther is going to be written off for a couple weeks. He probably doesn't even show up till Backlash, maybe the week prior. I don't know, but I'm for it. I guess it just has to be rebuilding Gunther. If Gunther after McAfee just goes back to the regular path he was already on, I don't know what the point was.
Yeah, completely agree. And I'm not going to panic. I also feel similar to like Jay. You're not going to run Gunther Jay back again right
No,
away.
they've
Similar
already
to
faced
Jay,
nine
like,
times.
yeah, and like what would Gunther do? I hate that argument, but like
I tap
I'm
out
sure
again. That might be what he does.
yeah, yeah, truly. Like I'm sure there's things that he could have done, but like for a guaranteed win, kind of a throwaway story, just a couple weeks, whatever, like I guess it makes sense, but fuck, it could have been fucking him beating up Alpha Academy again or some shit. I would have been fine
Yeah.
with it, whatever. But back on positive notes, the other main thing to come out of tonight is the NXT women, which two of them, do we even call them NXT women anymore? Roxanne, Julia are fully enthralled in this story with Rhea Ripley and the women's world champion Io Sky. Maybe we get a tag match at Backlash. Maybe we get a fatal four way for the title. Who knows? Then you also have Stephanie Vaquer getting a match against Ivy Nile. Is it just more of a showcase for Stephanie? I don't know. It's pretty clear that Roxanne and Julia are a tandem, and maybe Roxanne is Julia's mouthpiece while also being her partner, while also being a wrestler. Um, it's just refreshing for the women's division. I texted you that SmackDown could use this same refresher. I don't think they're going to get any call ups, but I don't think we're too far away from a draft.
Mhm.
but it's incredible how fresh the Raw women's division feels with these three. So the SmackDown women's division needs something similar.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised they at least haven't yet floated at least one of these women over to SmackDown. SmackDown has some good talent on it too, but I feel like Tiffany has already kind of run the gauntlet. They're rehashing stuff with Tiffany over there. Chelsea Green's been on a great run, but loses the U.S. title last week. Like, I don't know. I don't really know the route of a lot of these women on SmackDown. But the NXT women, again, we've been saying it for ages now. It's the best roster in a long time. It's about time some of the women do get called up out of that roster. I think pairing Julia with Roxanne is great. Julia needs the mouthpiece for now. I think that's only going to help Julia shine a little bit, and Roxanne is a good mouthpiece for that. So why not put them together? It also doesn't like skyrocket Roxanne too much. Like Roxanne is great. People want her to win the championship tomorrow. She's so young again. She has so much time. I don't think her having like a year run with Julia, maybe even winning the tag belts, try to establish these tag belts again with like an actual tag team. I don't think that's the worst idea. I think them two versus, say, Judgment Day would be a decent feud as well. Stephanie, I think, is being showcased a little bit still. I think Stephanie finds herself in a similar boat that Roxanne was in, where Stephanie's kind of playing both shows a little bit. Eventually, I believe they announced a battleground for NXT. Might be towards June. I forget exactly when. Maybe loses the championship at the upcoming, NXT PLE. Hopefully to the likes of like, say, Jordan Grace or maybe even Azaria.
They also have the Worlds Collide in June,
Oh yes, they have the Worlds Collide in June. Maybe that's what I'm mixing up.
which
Maybe
she'll
Battleground
definitely be
is,
involved in that.
of course, yeah. I mean, would probably win in that too. So maybe she is champion even all the way through. I mean, thinking about it now, maybe they do want Stephanie to be NXT champion all the way through the Worlds Collide event. So I could see her kind of just being showcased right now, which is okay. You still got the Becky return to Raw, which I think it's public knowledge. I'm not the biggest Becky fan at this point, but it is still a wrestler on the women's roster that's going to be involved a lot. So you're stacking this women's roster on Raw. SmackDown needs a helping hand a little bit. Yeah, I don't like Becky. I'm not a big fan of
I
Becky.
think
We'll
I
put
think
that
that
out
was breaking
there.
news, wasn't it? I don't think that's ever been mentioned before.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I've mentioned, since you brought up Becky, I rock with Lyra. I've been rocking
Yes,
with
me too.
Lyra a bit lately. We are very adamant. We call it as we see it. If we
Mm-hmm.
like something, we like it. If we don't, we don't. And we 1000% have no issue changing our opinions if someone has changed our opinions. Like that is
100%.
just simple. I mean, in this review alone, I've said Triple H is a genius for this combination of Seth and Braun, and I've also said I fucking hate what he's doing and it should be illegal with the world title and Gunther. So like
Yeah.
I'm just calling it as I see it. Lyra, I said to you, man, I don't get it. Like it
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't click with me. Like it wasn't I don't know, she just wasn't for me. Like, not everyone's for you. And it's not even like she really changed anything. It's just like a little bit over time, my opinions
It's better
changed.
booking.
Better booking. It helps that she's had some pretty fucking good matches along the
Mm-hmm.
way as well. And it's like, you know what? I really rock with this girl. And I'm
Yeah.
gonna be kind of pissed when she drops the title to
Yeah.
Becky.
Yeah, because it's happening. She's dropping that title to
Yeah.
Becky. Lock it the fuck in. That's
Yeah.
happening. That's like Cena winning the title. It's happening.
Yeah.
It's a little bit unfortunate. We have said in the past exactly kind of what you just said. Like with Lyra, we saw her stand and deliver. She was great back then too. Don't get me wrong. She's always been good in the ring. But like the gimmick to me, like she was always just kind of bland. Like it was just kind of there. She didn't really have like much to her, in my opinion. But in the last matter of weeks building up to Mania, they kind of turned it around with Lyra a little bit. She's got like a bit more charisma out there, it seems too, which has been really paying off. I just hate that it's going to pay off to Becky winning the IC title. I'm imagining their thinking is, which Lyra winning the IC title in the beginning was like out of left field. We all knew Chelsea was winning the US title. IC title was up in the air. Lyra winning, I feel like was like random at first. Whatever. Now they finally build this IC title up a little bit. And I feel like their thought is we didn't build it up enough. Let's put it on a former champion, the man, this, that, whatever's put on Becky. But on the flip side, you have Chelsea lose the U.S. title again, which makes no sense. I'm gonna drive that point home that that's like a crazy decision to make, even if you're hot potatoing that title back. It seems like to me they booked themselves in the corners with these mid card titles. I think they were introduced a little too soon, perhaps. I think we were on the path where you're really establishing these women's rosters, but I think the fans wanted it, and they maybe forced the hand of WWE, and they brought the titles in without clear paths. Neither of those titles being defended at WrestleMania is a perfect sign of it, to be fair as well.
it's not impossible that Bailey helps Lyra in
Yes.
her match against Becky, but to me, it might just delay the inevitable. Like,
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure Becky's going to end up winning the title. Before we go talking about it, I got to ask you, what is worse to you, Becky winning the championship or Chelsea losing her championship?
Becky winning the championship. For sure. Becky winning the championship. Chelsea will get another run. Chelsea will win again eventually. She'll get the money in the bank or they'll hot potato that title back. A Becky IC title run, that shit might last like 2 years, honestly. I have no idea. You know, I think that's their plan, is they're trying to establish that title a little bit better. Maybe she ends up losing it to Bailey or loses it back to Lyra. Who knows? But like, I also, the way they brought Becky back, shoehorned her into that tag title match. You hot potato those tag belts when we've been saying there's certain belts you should hot potato around, except those tag belts. They need to establish those tag belts. And then they have them losing the next night. And then she turns to it like, I don't know. It feels very forced to me. Maybe I'm biased because I'm just not a Becky fan. Maybe there's somebody out there that's saying, F you, Snowden, you're so wrong. Becky's the man, dude. Not to me.
Perfect way to end it. Subscriber, you're a coward.
See ya.
Bye.